Alright, let's talk about EDC. And no, I'm not talking about the Electronic Music Festival, as interesting as that is. I am talking about everyday carry. This actually used to be my hobby before I got into audio, and it's quite an interesting thing, honestly. The main thing that attracted me to it, though, was the idea of preparation, and sort of the idea, maybe in like a more corny sense, that it's like your inventory, like in a video game. It's just very fun building up your collection, and to a smaller extent, it's a small extension of who you are as a person. The title of this video might be a little bit misleading, but today I'm going to be running you guys through my bag loadout as an audiophile. So the stuff that I bring with me when I'm going to shows, when I'm going to conventions, and when I'm going to meetups. And with that being said, let's dive right into it. Okay, I already showed you guys a peek of my bag. This is the GoRock GR1 Slick. This was a collaboration backpack with Huckberry, which is an online retailer. In essence, this is the legendary GR1 backpack with all the MOLLE stuff and the tactical stuff basically removed from the backpack. As someone who has carried the original backpack for many years and been a big fan of it, minus the whole tactical aesthetic, this is exactly what I was looking for. Now, it's worth noting that this backpack is definitely not going to be for everyone. For most, it is a very simple backpack. It does not have the bells and whistles that a lot of tech backpacks these days are sort of sporting and that you might be familiar with. And another consideration to point out is that it is a very heavy bag due to its construction. It uses 1000D Cordura for the fabric, which is a very tough fabric, but at the same time, it's more abrasive than some other fabrics, and it's also on the heavier end of things. So while this is not a very quote-unquote tech-heavy backpack, as I was saying earlier, there is one very nice feature in my opinion, which is the laptop compartment. As you can see here, it unzips from the back of the backpack, and there's also a frame sheet in the back here to lend support to your back and to protect the laptop itself. The other really cool thing that I can't show on camera actually is that there is a false bottom at the backpack here. It's hard to see here, but if you take a look at where the fabric stops, you can sort of see that it stops about 2 inches off of the bottom of the backpack. And what this effectively means is that it protects your laptop from shock when you drop it on the floor, or the backpack itself on the floor, that is. So in the compartment, I have my M1 MacBook Air, which is mainly going to be used for taking measurements in conjunction with my clone IEC 711 coupler, and then as well as writing up the articles after the show usually. Sometimes I'll even just write up the impressions right there on the spot, and that's something that I tend to do at a lot of the smaller meetups that I go to when I know the people there and I don't have to, like, we're all just sort of doing our own thing and listening to each other's gear. And speaking of the measurements, this is where I store my IEC 711 coupler. This is a standard Pelican 1010 case, and it's just the perfect size for the coupler and the accompanying wires and all that good stuff. I like to just throw this into the main compartment of my backpack. Something else that I store in the main compartment of my backpack is my water bottle. Very important to stay hydrated, especially when you're having fun. The final thing that I usually store in the main compartment of my backpack is a case for my glasses. You know, I think it's really worth pointing out that a lot of the times I don't actually wear my glasses to the conventions and the meetups. The thing is, especially because we're in the middle of a pandemic when you should be wearing a mask a lot of the times, especially at these more crowded conventions, it's just very cumbersome to have the mask, your glasses, and then the ear wire of the IM wrapped around your ears. And especially with headphones too. The seal is a big consideration with headphones, and when you're on the show floor, you don't want to have a broken seal, especially because it's usually already pretty loud in the ambient environment. So yeah, I definitely default to wearing contacts when I'm at the conventions and meetups, but it is handy to have my glasses on hand just in case my contacts pop out or something like that, or my eyes just get too fatigued. One final thing that I might store in the main compartment is a jacket. Obviously, it's a nice quality of life thing, but at the same time, it also acts as a padding mechanism for the other stuff that I have stored in the main compartment. All right, now let's move on to some of the actual audio gear that I bring with me to shows and meetups. So something that I bring with me pretty much everywhere actually are my Apple AirPods Pros. And these have served me well, and they have a case from, I think it's Andor on them, a full grain leather case, which is pretty sweet. You know, it's a funny thing because a lot of people think that audiophiles and truly wireless aren't exactly things that go hand in hand. That said, the convenience on these is just simply unparalleled, especially in tandem with my iPhone 13 mini. And if you're in the Apple ecosystem just in general, the convenience cannot be beaten with the Apple AirPods. From the perspective of pure sound quality though, they're still surprisingly competent. They have a warm neutral signature with a more mid-bass emphasis, a gentle rise to the Pina compensation in upper mid-range, a little bit of muting going on in the mid-treble, which I think lends to some of that plasticky timbre sort of to the way they decay in the transients. But overall, just really nothing offensive, and they're just very easy on the ears in general. Okay, AirPods Pros aside, when I am looking for maximum comfort, and I stress maximum because the Apple AirPods Pros are already pretty darn comfortable for me. But if I'm looking for maximum comfort and maximum isolation, that's when I default to my 64-audio A4Ss. These are customs, meaning that they're shaped to the unique anatomy of my ear, and because of this, the comfort with them is unparalleled. And a good example of that is the recent trip that I took to Singapore on the plane. They were a godsend. I could just keep them popped in for hour after hour with pretty much zero fatigue. And the other great thing is that they have that little apex module, that attenuator for air pressure, so that you don't get that sort of sense of pressure building up when the plane's taking off and it's landing. Now, in terms of pure sound quality, I certainly don't think that the A4S are all that. I don't think they're $1,200 good in terms of pure sound quality, but they are pretty great on the other end of the more practical side of things, in my opinion. Okay, so moving on to the final IM that I usually run for shows and stuff of that nature are the Moondrop variations. The rationale behind this one is pretty simple. It's mainly because the frequency response of the variations is just very consistent. It's tuned almost exactly to the Harman target, and that's a target that I'm very familiar with, so it makes it very easy to A/B with other IMs and sort of discern for aberrations in frequency response relative to the variations. Now, if I had it my way, I would probably be using the Apple dongle for all my listening, but the reality is when you're at these shows and stuff, a lot of the times they want you to use the balanced connections like 2.5mm and 4.4mm, and that's sort of where my DAP, the DX300 from my Basso, comes in. So yeah, this DAP is very convenient in the sense that it has pretty much every major termination, and it's also one of the speedier DAPs on the market because of its Snapdragon 660. You know what's funny is that the Snapdragon 660 is actually a pretty outdated chip in terms of like the broader smartphone market, but in terms of like DAPs, it's still class leading like 2 years later down the line. The major con of this DAP is obviously the size of it. It's an absolute unit. It's actually not that heavy, but the dimensions of it are quite large relative to other DAPs on the market. And for this reason, I generally just throw it into the front slash pocket of the GR1. Okay, and that is a high-level run-through of most of the gear that I bring with me to audio conventions and shows. There's obviously some other stuff that I carry with me sometimes, like the iFi match, which is very useful for more sensitive IMs, but I don't always carry that stuff with me. And these are the main sort of essentials that I carry with me when I go to these shows and meetups. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed looking at my bag loadout. Tell me what you guys think in the comments, how I could improve it. Maybe some of the stuff you expected to see, didn't expect to see. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next video.